Welcome to the MaxCast Plus Supine training video. The MaxCast Plus is a turnkey traditional total contact casting system that contains all the components required to apply a traditional total contact cast. Cast preparation. Before applying a cast, review the patient and application instruction sheets. Remove the contents from the package, take your self-adhering dressing, and prepare to cut 4 strips. The 4 strips will be utilized to secure the posterior splint and the walker in place during the supine application. Next, take your stockinette and roll up the leg to just above the knee. Leave 2 to 3 inches hanging over the toes, making sure that there are no bumps or wrinkles on the plantar surface. Next, take the self-adhesive foam, remove the backing, apply with the long edge at the mid-sulcus, folding over the toes and squeezing the edges, creating dog ears. Take scissors following the contour of the foot and remove the excess foam from the lateral and medial sides of the foot. Next, we apply the lateral and medial strips. Measure from the base of the malleolus about 3 fingers below the patella, angling slightly inward towards the anterior tibia. Apply the strip and then utilize the excess felt to create a bridge between the proximal edge of the lateral and medial strips. Repeat on the opposing side of the leg. Next, take the self-adhesive talus pad and apply at the anterior bend of the foot centered over the talus. Utilize excess felt from the medial and lateral strips to line the tibial crest. We now apply the malleoli strips. Measure from the edge of the toe foam to the back and bottom edge of the lateral and medial strips. Apply the malleoli strip and again utilize the excess felt to line the tibial crest. Repeat on the opposing side of the foot. The patient is now ready for casting. Take the 4-inch roll of cotton cast padding and begin rolling over the toe foam, proximally up the leg. Overlap by approximately 1/3 of the width of the cast padding. Roll to the proximal edge of the lateral and medial felt strips, leaving the edge exposed. Next, take your plaster, remove from the package, Hydrate for 3 to 5 seconds and squeeze out excess water. Begin rolling the plaster starting at the toe foam, following the same line as the cast padding. Roll approximately up the leg, overlapping by approximately 3/4 of an inch until the cast plaster has been completely utilized. Again, leave the proximal edges of the lateral and medial strips exposed. Smoothen the cast padding to eliminate any bumps or wrinkles, especially on the plantar surface. Next, we apply our first roll of 4-inch fiberglass cast tape. Remove from the packaging, briefly hydrate, and squeeze out any excess water. Again, start at the toe foam, following the same line as the plaster, and roll proximally up the leg. Overlap by approximately 1/3 the width of the roll of cast tape. Continue to roll up the leg, leaving the proximal edges of the lateral and medial felt exposed. Take any excess material and roll down towards the calf until completely utilized. Briefly smoothen the loose end of the cast material. Next, we apply our prefabricated posterior splint. Remove the splint from the packaging and unroll, leaving about 6 to 8 inches exposed. Take the first strip of self-adhering dressing and secure the posterior splint on the posterior side of the leg at the proximal edge of the cast. Allow the splint to hang without touching the floor. Take the excess stockinette and roll over the proximal end of the cast, creating a collar and securing the splint in place. Align the splint across the plantar surface with the excess folded over the toes. Take the next strip of self-adhering dressing to secure the posterior splint at the distal end of the calf. Take the next strip to secure the plantar portion of the splint at the center of the foot. Utilize the last strip of self-adhering dressing to secure the rocker walker. There is a front to back orientation of the rocker walker. Run the strip through the center bridge, securing to the plantar surface. Make sure that the front of the back pad is in alignment with the anterior tibia. We are now ready to apply our last roll of 4-inch fiberglass tape. Remove the tape from the packaging and briefly hydrate. Squeeze out any excess water. Apply starting at the midfoot at either the styloid process or the medial cuneiform. Roll towards the toes, around the heel, and back towards the toes again. As the cast tape overlaps, pin with your fingers, making 2 full rotations, securing the front of the rocker walker in place. On the third rotation, twist the cast tape 3 times, running through the center of the walker, securing it in place. Continue to roll proximally up the leg, securing the back of the walker. Roll to the proximal edge of the cast, leaving the soft edges of the lateral and medial strips exposed. Next, utilize the remainder of the self-adhering dressing to secure the loose end of the fiberglass cast tape. Once the cast tape is secured, the clinician can move on to other patients. The patient can hang their leg off the bed, being careful to not bump the cast. Allow the cast to cure for 10 to 12 minutes prior to ambulation. Cast removal. Take a Sharpie and mark the outer edges of your lateral and medial strips. Next, mark the base of the strips and then 90 degrees to the edge of the toe foam. Next, draw a line down the center, as this will be your cutting indicator. Repeat on both sides of the cast. Next, cut proximally down the center of the felt to the center of the malleolus. There's a prominent bump where the malleoli strips and the lateral and medial strips overlap. Then cut 90 degrees to the edge of the toe foam. Repeat on the opposing side of the cast. Next, cut over the distal toe area, being careful to not cut too deep. This will create a hinge for the center of the cast to pivot off of once it's removed. Take your scissors and relieve the stockinette in the same line as your lateral and medial cuts. Utilize cast spreaders to loosen the cast along the incisions. Support the patient's foot and remove the center of the cast pulling towards you. Use your scissors to cut the stockinette. Once the stockinette has been cut, gently spread the proximal end of the cast and remove. MaxCast Plus, traditional total contact casting made easy.